think it's pretty fair to say that it is salad weather now, so we're going to have a look at harvesting our lettuce, and we can also think about sowing some more. But the first thing we're going to want for this is a bowl of cold water, just to make sure that we pop what we harvest straight into this to keep it cool and keep it nice and crisp and tender. Then we're going to take our lettuce inside and we're going to have a look at how to store it in the fridge to keep it as fresh as possible for as long as possible. And you'll be able to see behind me, that's the lettuce that we did in the tray, and then I've got some more in the tunnel. That's a little bit further behind because it was in those smaller trays, but the ones that were in soil blocks are much bigger, so we're going to harvest from those ones. This is the lettuce that we're going to look at harvesting from today. So they're taking up a decent amount of space each, and you can see that they're struggling for that space as well. So what we're going to do is pick leaves from around the edge. Don't drink that. I'll stop the dog drinking the water that I'm about to use. So we're going to pick the leaves from around the edge, and that's going to leave the plant plenty more space to continue growing and give us more harvest as well. If we just cut them out at this point, then we only have that amount of leaves, whereas it will continue producing this centre and giving us more leaves by actually taking leaves from around the edge. As I'm doing this, I am also aware that these varieties here are a winter variety, so they're not going to cope with the heat very well. I am going to harvest just around the edge for now, but I'll be keeping a close eye on these two for bolting and actually removing the whole plant as and when I need to, because I don't want to let it go to waste. So to start harvesting, we're just going to find some of the outside leaves, push down and take each individual leaf and then continue round in a circle. If you've got any that are eaten or just not looking quite so good, then they can be popped straight into the compost. We still want to make sure that we've got plenty of the centre of this plant left to allow it to be strong and continue growing. I'm not going to take too much because I've already got some in the house. I'm just going to take a selection of the different ones. It's exactly the same for the other varieties. This one, you can see I've got some holes in the leaves, so this is likely slug damage because it's around the edge. The target in this one, so any with the damage on, I'm just going to remove those leaves and pop them in the compost, or of course we can still eat around them. I've got loads, so I don't think I'm going to need that many. We're removing these leaves just to try and stop any more damage, because they will continue to target leaves that are a little bit weaker than the rest, basically. And then I've got this Olorosa down here. These are a very pretty frilly shape leaf. As I've picked them, I've just popped them straight in the water. This is the size of the other lettuce, which aren't quite as big and they're not maybe as ready to harvest yet, and that's simply because they were in the smaller style trays and haven't done as well. So the first thing we need to do is give these a good clean, so I'm going to just divide them into two halves to give me a bit more working space. This is a salad spinner, so it literally just gives us an easier ability to wash the leaves off and then spin as much of the excess fluid off as we can. This one is from Oxo. They do a great range of different varieties which are really good for like dexterity issues, so it's really helpful for me. I'm sure you can get other ones that are cheaper as well, but I would recommend getting a salad spinner if you haven't got one already. So just empty it out. First thing we're going to do is dump this on the plants outside. So all the water that we're using here, we can use to water our plants. So we're going to add more fresh water. Just give them a bit of a swish around. Just trying to dislodge any dirt or bugs that might be sat on them. And then lift the basket up. And once our water runs reasonably clean, that's when we can start looking at spinning it. If you haven't got a spinner, you could just lay them flat on a piece of kitchen towel and then pat it gently over the top. And then we're going to want some sort of large tub. I've got a load of the last of the spinach leaves out the garden and sorting, and then also some other salad leaves. So these are going to go underneath these. In the bottom, you're just going to add a piece of dry kitchen roll. This is going to stop it sitting in lots of excessive water. And then we just want to check the leaves as we put them in, make sure there's no slugs or snails. Most of these leaves are quite flat, so that's quite easy. Your Lola Rosa may be a little bit more red, and that will depend on the heat or the cold that it's experienced. So they change colour depending on how cold they've got usually. So these ones in the tunnel are usually more green than the ones that I've got growing outside. You can find that things hide a little bit more in these really frilly ones, so just check them a little bit more thoroughly than you would the others. Make sure we don't find any little tiny snails. Once we've got all the leaves in there, we want to make sure that we don't crush them, because that's just going to cause them to bruise and not last as long. And then we're going to wet a piece of kitchen towel and just rest that over the top. This is just going to help them stay crispy for longer, basically. And then they will sit very happily in there for at least a week, but I've also had them good for up to a month before. So now we don't need to worry about having a glut of lettuces in the garden. We can just slowly keep picking from them and have them ready to go when we need them in the fridge. To keep our lettuce from bolting, it's going to be really important to make sure that we do water it really well during this hot period. Keep the soil around it as damp as you can, and just try not to let it completely dry out, because that's when it's going to have a look at bolting. Bolting just looks like the plant starting to get long and starting to raise up. At that point, the leaves can get a little bit more tough and a little bit bitter. Can still pick them just as it starts doing it, but as it gets a bit further along, it won't be very nice and you'll want to take it out. This is not the plants that we want to save for any seeds. We want to use a plant that has coped well with the heat and that has done very well and matured to actually save seeds from, rather than an early bolting variety. You can head back to video 2 if you are ready to sow some more, to make sure you've got plenty of succession of these going. Don't forget there are certain varieties that are going to be better to bring over summer. That is something that we do talk about in the first video as well. But I would definitely wait until this main heat is gone and then start looking at sowing and popping them either outside in a shaded spot or in a shaded spot somewhere that you've got undercover but that isn't too hot, because otherwise it's just going to go straight to seed and they won't do very well or even germinate.